Bloom's taxonomy is a widely used educational framework that categorizes learning objectives into a hierarchy of cognitive skills, progressing from basic recall to complex creation. Understanding this framework can help you, as a student, organize your study habits, approach assignments more effectively, and develop deeper critical thinking skills. What is Bloom's taxonomy? Developed in the 1950s by educational psychologist Benjamin Bloom and his committee, the original taxonomy was a way to classify the goals of the education system. It was later revised in the early 2000s by Bloom's former student Lauren Anderson and others to better reflect the active nature of learning by using verbs instead of nouns for the levels. The taxonomy is most often represented as a pyramid, with lower-order thinking skills at the base and higher-order thinking skills at the apex. The core idea is that each level must be achieved before moving on to the next, though in practice, learning can be more fluid. The taxonomy is divided into 3 domains of learning: cognitive domain, mental skills and knowledge acquisition, the focus of most discussions of the taxonomy; affective domain, growth in feelings, emotions, attitudes, and values; psychomotor domain, manual or physical skills, for example in a PE class or a lab setting. For students, the most impactful domain is the cognitive one, which provides a roadmap for developing intellectual skills. The 6 levels of the revised cognitive domain. The revised cognitive domain uses action verbs to describe the different levels of thinking, moving from the simplest to the most complex. 1. Remember. This foundational level involves retrieving or recalling previously learned information from long-term memory. It is about raw factual knowledge and basic concepts. Student actions include recognizing, listing, describing, identifying, retrieving, naming, and locating. Examples in a class include listing the key dates of the American Civil War in a history quiz, reciting the formula for the area of a circle in a math class, or naming the different parts of a cell in a biology test. Study tips include using flashcards, creating memory lists or acronyms, or drawing mind maps to solidify this foundational knowledge. 2. Understand. Moving beyond simple recall, this level requires you to construct meaning from the educational materials. You need to be able to interpret, summarize, and explain concepts in your own words. Student actions include interpreting, exemplifying, summarizing, classifying, comparing, explaining. Examples in a class include summarizing a chapter from a textbook in a paragraph, explaining the main causes of a historical event, or describing a scientific process, such as photosynthesis. Study tips include rephrasing your notes, teaching the material to a friend, or creating an outline of the key ideas to ensure you grasp the meaning, not just the words. 3. Apply. At this stage, you use the knowledge and comprehension you've gained in a new or a different familiar situation. It's about putting learned procedures into practice. Student actions include implementing, solving, carrying out, using, showing, executing. Examples in a class include using a math formula to solve a never-before-seen problem, applying a scientific principle to a real-world scenario or lab experiment, or using correct grammar rules to write a new paragraph. Study tips include focusing on problem-solving exercises, case studies, or simulations that require you to actively use your knowledge. 4. Analyze. This is the first level of higher-order thinking skills. Analyzing involves breaking information into its component parts to explore understandings and relationships. You focus on how the parts relate to the overall structure or purpose. Student actions include breaking down, differentiating, organizing, structuring, integrating, comparing, outlining. Examples in a class include comparing and contrasting two different political theories, examining the character motives in a novel, or differentiating between facts and opinions in a news article. Study tips include creating charts, graphs, or outlines that visually represent the relationships between ideas. Look for underlying assumptions or logical fallacies in arguments. 5. Evaluate. Evaluation involves making judgments based on criteria and standards. This requires critical thinking to assess the value or validity of material and justify your decision. Student actions include checking, critiquing, judging, testing, detecting, arguing, concluding, defending. Examples in a class include critiquing a peer's writing and providing a justified verdict, assessing the validity of an argument in a debate, defending a particular decision in a business ethics case study. Study tips include practicing forming evidence-based opinions and engaging in structured debates or panel discussions. When reviewing information, ask yourself, how well does this work, and what criteria am I using to judge this? 6. Create. The highest level of the taxonomy, creating involves putting elements together to form a coherent or functional whole, or generating new ideas, products, or ways of viewing things. Student actions include producing, planning, constructing, designing, inventing, devising, making, composing, and generating. Examples in a class include writing an original short story or poem, designing a new experiment to test a hypothesis, or developing a unique solution to a community problem, common in project-based learning. Study tips include engaging in projects that require innovation and independent thought. Focus on combining different pieces of knowledge to produce something new and original. How you can use Bloom's taxonomy. For assignment, when you receive an assignment, look at the action verbs in the instructions. Are you being asked to list, remember, or justify, evaluate? This tells you the level of thinking required. For studying, use the levels as a checklist. Don't just stop at memorizing facts. Push yourself to understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and eventually create with the material. For self-assessment, ask yourself what level of thinking you are currently using. If you're stuck at the remember stage, use the resources at your disposal, like the University of Arkansas Student Resources, to move to higher levels.